Good afternoon. Welcome, Facebook Live family. Welcome, everyone in the Zoom room. We are here for South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light and South Carolina Health Professionals for Climate Action's ongoing series on the topic of faith, health, and climate change. Today, we are so grateful to be joined by a wonderful group of speakers who will share about their personal experiences. We'll also hear about EJ40 and the wonderful opportunity that our communities have to be able to benefit from the priorities that have been directed towards communities that have often been left out of the conversation. Again, we are so glad to have you today, and we will begin our discussion in just one moment. So let me grab our first.
For just $67, you can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera or use any fancy editing.
The Biden-Harris administration committed 40% of federal climate and clean infrastructure investments to under-resourced communities. And racial equity must be at the forefront of climate investments that prioritize the most vulnerable, rural, urban, and historically neglected communities. We must take action now to protect our communities and climate. Visit www.thejustice40.com to find the groundbreaking report that guides federal agencies on the steps needed to design and implement the Justice 40 initiative. We need a robust accountability framework and a community-anchored approach that elevates community leaders at all stages of the policy design, implementation, and evaluation. Let's empower frontline communities by ensuring the Justice 40 initiative centers community solutions for climate, environmental, economic, and racial justice.
Environmental justice, we know, is a human rights issue and is one that significantly impacts health, which is why we have Dr. Brandon Emery here with the South Carolina Health Professionals for Climate Action. In his encyclical Laudato Si, Pope Francis a few years ago called for an integral ecology, one which clearly respects its human and social dimensions. However, due to wealth disparities, systemic racism, the legacy of redlining, poor land use and community planning, and marginalized political influence, many communities face negative health consequences from polluting industries, from natural disasters, and from climate change. Current policies and systems have failed to center and meet the fundamental needs that would support resilience in our communities. However, the Biden administration's Justice 40 requires that investment in communities most impacted by environmental and climate injustice receive the support needed. Our conversation today will focus on what's possible when faith, health, and environmental sectors in South Carolina come together and we advocate for the funding and priorities that advance health, resiliency, and justice for all. Today, again, our moderator will be Dr. Brandon Emery, a Lexington area pediatrician and founding member of South Carolina Health Professionals for Climate Action. We also have a community member in the Greenville area of South Carolina, Angela Aiken, who will be sharing about her experiences in New Washington Heights. We also have Michael Brown, Executive Director of Sustaining Way and former Spartanburg County Council member, who also was a resident of the Arkwright community in Spartanburg, South Carolina, who will share about his experiences. And we also are really blessed to have Ms. Sakita Grant here, who's Vice President of Programs at the Solutions Project, one of the core organizations that created the Justice 40 Accelerator. Today, we are going to begin with prayer provided by Reverend Brendolyn Jenkins Bozeman. Reverend Bozeman is the pastor and lead servant of Hudson Memorial Christian Methodist Episcopal Church in Augusta, Georgia. She's also a board member for Georgia IPL, and she's founder and executive director of the Amani Group, a community-based nonprofit organization working across justice issues. Thank you so much again for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. May we pray. Your word teaches us, Lord, that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And we gather at this noonday hour, blessed to be present, trusted with another day. We ask your blessings upon this event, the knowledge, the information, each representative that will present. We pray special blessings upon the South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light. We pray special blessings upon the South Carolina health professionals for climate action and each one of our presenters. We pray that not only will they speak truth to power, but they will speak truth with power. Power that will be transformational, power that will revive and restore. Open up our hearts, open up our minds, but most of all, our spirits to receive a message that speaks to equity, equality, liberation, and justice. We thank you for your many gifts, those too numerous to count. And I pray all of this in the precious and mighty name of my Lord, my Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for the introduction, Alicia, and thank you for the excellent prayer as well. When I got the invitation to moderate this discussion, I was really excited. Being a member of the South Carolina Health Professionals for Climate Action, we approach climate change as a public health crisis. And regardless of the aspect of climate change, whether we're looking at extreme heat, flooding, et cetera, environmental justice always plays a central role. And the opportunity to discuss that with these three very knowledgeable individuals was something I could not pass up. So first, I'd like to give each of them time to tell us their story. So I believe narratives are very important and also part of their organization as well. So what I'd like to start with is Angela Aiken. If she can give us a quick narrative and tell us about the community that she's in.
Yes, my name is Angela Aiken. I'm from the New Washington Heights community. It used to be a very thriving, but predominantly Black, well, it was a Black neighborhood. Due to the environmental injustices, we have been met with a wave of disregardment of people. We were given a master plan that promised us to be able to have green space where we could still be able to enjoy our community, where the eagles that flew over and sometimes landed, and the falcon, which was our mascot, our school mascot, a historical community, is where I'm from. It was historical in more than one ways, and it should have been left to history for forever. And what happened
So we'll give Angela a second to get back online here. I think we lost her for a minute. Let's see. Angela, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. I don't know where I broke off at, but where it ended at. But if you could tell me a little bit about what you did here so I could finish.
We were getting right to where the promises were made and broken.
Yes, a master plan.
You were talking about the school, the historical school, and it was more than historical in one way.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So that we our community has history more than one way. We had a Black school that was built in the 70s. The only Black school that catered to Black kids from all around Greenville area and vicinity. this school was a catalyst to help aid and produce outstanding and super education to all children. The school was deemed inhabitable. They shut it down due to integration and bus the school students away from there. Mind you that they had schools that were built way before this school, but they picked the school because it was in a Black neighborhood to shut it down. So during the integration, our students was bused away from home and stuff. We were all bused away from home. And it left that school empty for a while, and then they turned it into a place for disabled kids, and they stayed there for a little while until it was started to be a lot of complaints because it was in the location it was in, the Black location, and they wanted it moved. So they moved it, and then the county took full control of it and deemed it inhabitable, and they wanted to knock it down. So we wasn't given the opportunity for, to have a lot of input on it. And they took that area after they knocked the building down and made us a master plan that they were supposed to abide by. Well, what we thought they were supposed to abide by. Later on to find out that it was just it was a distraction from the bigger picture. We was promised that we was going to be able to keep green space in order to keep the natural wildlife there and the natural fruit trees and berries and all this stuff that we so much enjoyed in our community. And we have a creek there. And that creek has it has fish, tadpoles, frogs, and occasionally you might see a snake or two. And we enjoyed that community. Adjacent to that creek is the first historical Black recreation park, where the only place that Black people could come together and congregate and enjoy life, and enjoy one another. This place has been standing there for a long time. And this very same building, a historical building, is where all the unjust things took place, at the belief and the trust that the county would do right by our community, given the history behind it. That master plan was just a distraction. We later to find out that they took that place where the school was and turned it into, want to put a green link bus maintenance center there. And if you guys know anything about the bus maintenance centers, it's where they gas up, they work on buses, and those buses come in, it's a terminal for the buses. Those buses will be parked there, those buses will leave from there. And each time that they're cranked up, those fumes, those gases, and all those things are going to come to the air and come down on our community. Our community was already encaged, but now it's like we would be in jail for a crime that we didn't commit. We have on the front side of our neighborhood, we have a major highway, which is always congested. Those cars, that we have to deal with the pollution from those cars. And on the left side of our community, we have a concrete yard. And it has a track on it, which the train used to be on it, but that train no longer runs on it. On the right side, we do have an active train track that trains are up and down that track all day long, all night long, 24/7. And it shakes the foundation of your house. You can be in your house and you can feel the rumble up under your feet from the train. We have oil company on that right side. On the other side of those tracks, it's an oil company called Echo's Oil Company. And behind the Echo Oil Company is a factory. There is a beer company. And they have 18 wheelers, so many of them in and out. I can't even keep a count of how many in and out all day long. So we got to deal with that pollution from there too. So our community being underprivileged, but homeowners, but at a lower income rate, has not had the opportunity or the ability to stand up and fight this situation that is going on in this community. And the only thing that I ask is that we be recognized as human citizens of Greenville County and throughout this world, because this is a very unjust procedure that is taking place. And I just want it fixed. I'm willing to go as far as I need to go in order to correct some of these wrongs that has happened to my community and various communities around me. That was part of my presentation, and I hope you guys were able to hear me and understand me. I'm very passionate about my community because my community is not just a community, it's family. Where there was a connection, there has been a disconnection created. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Angela. We heard everything, and we really appreciate you sharing the story. It seems like a chain of social injustices has kind of led to this event. And being on the frontline community like you are, we really appreciate you sharing that. I got a lot to unpack there, but I'd like to give Michael Brown a chance as well to share his story of another frontline community as well.
Thank you, and Angela, thank you for sharing that story. It's a story that, unfortunately is too common, and it definitely speaks to the inequities that are very similar across the board with communities that face very similar issues. I grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina, near the south side of Spartanburg, and I guess for a reference, if I say it's directly down South Church Street, not too far from the old Carver High School, which is now Carver Junior High School, Mary H. Wright. And in particular, there used to be in the heart of the community a very well-known large vegetable stand. And now directly across from that is one of those dollar stores and unfortunately a liquor store and a gas station that's directly on the corner from where I grew up. Just as I had just came back from attending college, there began to be a discussion in my community about the fact that they had finally closed down the old chemical fertilizer plant just up the street. And there were some questions about the unfortunate part that a number of people had come down with what seemed to be illnesses that we had all questioned over the years and tried to find out where things were happening. Well, it was about 15 people initially began having a conversation along with a guy that grew up the street, directly up the street from me, named Harold Mitchell, and his family. They literally, if you could see where their house was located, their house was literally almost in the parking lot of where this fertilizer plant was. Well, as a fertilizer plant closed down, there were people on the street that had finally started getting some results back from the doctors. And unfortunately, Harold's father had a form of terminal cancer. He had a sister who had passed away due to some contamination or sepsis. The system unfortunately got infected, and it was just a number of people that were coming out with these rare forms of cancer that would only be seen if there was some form of air pollution or something that people at the time, the doctors in Spartanburg, just didn't think could happen. Well, with that, group of us started talking, and I know my parents attended the meeting along with members from the community that had called in for the EPA to take a look at what was happening. From that meeting, a $20,000 grant was given for a study of just the area. And thank God that U.S. Senator Fritz Hollins was one of the persons that was listening, because there was a lot of pushback that was going on. And, unfortunately, the powers that be at the time were dismissing what the community was saying, that there had to be a link between the way people were getting sick, the fact that, we could wake up and literally look up and see a purplish orange sky. You can smell the smell of what I always said as a little kid was rotten eggs, with some type of sulfur smell in the air. And with that study that was done by the EPA, there was a series of soil tests that were conducted, and over 70 contaminants were found, which also included mercury, and was found to be, at least for 30 of them, they were well over 3 times the amount of the allowable contamination levels by any federal regulatory agency. So with that, the site that you can see in this photo was directly also used from this old plant that was a textile plant in the area. And unfortunately, it just became a well-known dumping site, along with what was happening with the fertilization plant. And unfortunately, the local hospital and other medical providers started dumping stuff over time. It was hypodermic needles, biodegradable stuff that clearly should never ever find its way in a 96% predominantly African American community, like we lived in Arkwright and Forest Park, which was just to the back of us. A little bit less than 5,000 people in that whole area. But with that, the government immediately came in and designated our sites as a Superfund site, which means there would have to be a long-term process of trying to deal with the contamination that was in the area. From that, surveys were done, health surveys from various families. 62 people within a 1 mile radius had found the experience in less than a 2-year type of study. They had died, from lung cancer and had other respiratory disease. With that, it was just found that there was a direct link from what had happened over time, and just the blatant disregard of the way that people were living in this community and trying to thrive and survive. At the same time, the city of Spartanburg and the county began to look at ways in which they were going to redevelop downtown. And of course, this area is less than a mile from the heart of downtown, which over time, with Harold's prodding and the way he went about trying to do things, Harold, obviously became well known for his efforts. A community center was set up with about a $650,000 grant, and the whole overall project was known as Regenesis. And so the community center took on the name Regenesis Community Center. Senator Hollins came down, dedicated the place, and the city and county got involved with the whole redevelopment effort, along with some federal funds that came in through another project known as the Hope 6. And so within the area, we all just got involved with just redevelopment through housing, through the community center, through a major $2 million road project. And over time, even with some private investment and a new community center that grew out of that, it's now been over $300 million. And both Harold and I had a chance to be from that community, and at the same time, I got elected to county council, and Harold was serving in the state house. We ultimately were able to work together on some projects that also just came together at the right time. And I'm just so very blessed to be able to say that I literally was able to come back to my community and try to help with an effort that started right at the time in which I was getting out of school and going to law school. But it's still an ongoing, effort. There's a landfill that had to be capped, and still trying to find ways to utilize that space as best as we can. But it's just amazing with what we talk about now with the Justice 40 initiative, with the fact that solar is such a major reality in terms of reducing costs, that we're looking at doing a solar farm there. And Harold Mitchell, through his efforts, and Regenesis being such a national project now, in terms of an example, it's helping the work that's being done in New Washington Heights. And Harold is on the advisory committee for the White House, actually, as it relates to environmental justice issues. And so it's just come full circle. But again, Spartanburg, such a small community, less than 5,000 people on that side of town, not a lot of emphasis historically was placed there. It just happened to be such a very bad situation that it's unfortunate that people literally had to lose their lives in order for a change to occur. But again, it's just like what's happening all over. And the problems that are being faced throughout this country, and in particular what's going on in New Washington Heights and other communities that are very similar. That's what we've gotten involved in, and just thankfully for the voices that you hear here today. Angela, her family, and the community members of New Washington Heights, it's just been a real blessing to just be a part of the initial efforts to try to help change that community as well and try to transform their situation.
Thank you for sharing that. That was a great example again of a frontline community that had chain after chain of social injustices and took a major trauma to even affect any kind of change, which I think is a great segue to Sakita Grant to talk about EJ40 and also how that translates from national level to the local community level as well.
Thank you, Brandon. So this is more than an intro for me. I'll dig into the slides I have. Does that sound right? Okay, cool. So I'll share my screen. Very, very moved by Michael's story and Angela's story, and I feel a lot of gratitude for the leadership that y'all bring and the people that you work with. So I'm gonna, let's see. All right. Let's see what happens when I do that. Can y'all see the slideshow? Okay, so I'll go through pretty quickly, but I can see how we can make maybe this available for folks if they want to see it later. So I really appreciate and cherish opportunities to be actually physically located in the South, particularly the Southeast, and certainly engaging in convenings in that area. And from a meta level, it's about seeing that the South is an important area because, as we've heard from stories, there is a significant amount of sacrificing of communities for quote unquote progress. And but for me, the thing that I'm most excited about, so there's a lot of indicators as to why the Southeast has been receiving some of the worst of pollution and the impacts of climate change. But what I feel really excited about is the innovation and the leadership that comes from the South. And that if, having folks, those frontline leaders and innovators being in a position to actually have the resources and have the burdens out of the way and to be able to thrive and actually execute and realize the solutions and vision that frontline communities have, I think that's the way forward for humanity, really. So my name is Sakita Grant. I'm the Vice President of the Solutions Project. We're a movement, we're an intermediary funder that aligns with climate justice movement leaders. We fund at the front lines. And I'm here to talk about the Justice 40 Accelerator. Shout out to my colleague, Jamie Lewis, who really is the mastermind behind these slides that I'll be going through. So, and just a little bit of background, there's a Justice 40 initiative, which we learned about in the beginning. Alicia played the video of the Justice 40 initiative. That's the federal government commitments to direct at least 40% of any federal government resources that are going to climate and clean energy, to direct that to what they refer to as disadvantaged communities, which is essentially, if done right, should be the communities that have been historically burdened by pollution and historically under-resourced by federal and other funding. I'm going to talk a lot about the Justice 40 Accelerator, which is a non-government, it's not part of the government. It's something that was put together by nonprofits and philanthropy to help support frontline groups being able to access funding coming out of the federal government. So it's like an incubator of sorts to provide lots of resources and learnings to support groups that want to draw down on federal dollars. So just wanted to note that. Let's see how I'm gonna advance. Okay, so I'll skip through. These are the core partners. I won't go through each, but Elevate, Groundswell, Hummingbird, Partnership for Southern Equity, and the Solutions Project were the kind of like the founding partners that helped to get this off the ground. We heard some about the Justice 40 initiative in that video. It's a great opportunity. And whether it's realized, Angela, your comments about the promises made and broken really struck a chord for me. And I think it's important as we move, as we learn about the Justice 40 and any government programs, that we prepare ourselves and have the knowledge, but understand where the dark sides can show up on some of this work. So really being equipped with, and this is what the Justice 40 Accelerator is about, supporting folks to be equipped with the knowledge to move with self-determination as it relates to federal funding. So having the knowledge to even say, no, I don't want to pursue this funding if it doesn't make sense, because there is a lot of requirements attached with federal funding, and it could be burdensome. So I think it's important to move with full in our power and with self-determination around it. But there are a lot of resources, even before this initiative, there's a lot of resources that it's the United States government that they have available. And so how can we both fight to change the systems of resourcing, which have historically been set up to not be accessible to our communities, and in some ways even been used to burden our communities, depending on how the money is used. And so how can we change that? And at the same time, best position ourselves to be able to draw down on those resources if that's what is right for our community. So the vision for the Justice 40 Accelerator, again, separate from the government initiative, anchored in love, service, and sincere commitment to frontline communities, the Justice 40 Accelerator seeks to leverage this moment to radically reimagine the existing government resource delivery system as a restorative and reparative framework that better supports Black and historically disinvested communities of color. Some of the types of work. So the Justice 40 Accelerator has done a lot of listening and learning to what's needed on the ground to make the Justice 40 initiative. So making any federal funding pot available actually accessible. Forming a cohort of frontline leaders. There was an application that went out, and so 52 organizations were selected with 52 projects. Actually, more than 52. There are 52 projects that were selected, and provide the Justice 40 Accelerator. I'll talk a little bit more about what's provided, but grants and pre-development support. Also seeking to build capacity and connections to support applying for government funding. That's what I was mentioning. And also opportunities to have direct engagement with the agencies that are administering this money. These are the Justice 40 Accelerator values. Climate justice is racial justice. Those closest to the problems are closest to the solutions. Empowering and resourcing communities to lead is the surest way towards transformative action on climate change. Realizing this vision requires strategic and tactical realignment between government and frontline communities. So right now, and it depends on where you are located. There's some areas where the flow through the local government is a little bit smoother and works out better for our communities, but that's very rare. And so mostly we see where there's a disconnect or a really harmful relationship between government resources and communities. The Justice Frontline community specifically, the Justice 40 Initiative has transformative potential to shift the paradigm of federal funding. I want to emphasize right now potential, because I want us to move with awareness that I think folks, transformation is not going to happen in a political cycle. And what the US government is going to do in this moment to be transformative is likely to be limited to what we know is needed for our liberation. But we can engage in ways that keep us continuing forward to get to that liberation that we're seeking. And I'll talk more about that. Centering community can build momentum towards the Biden-Harris administration goals, making progress toward a future that is reparative and healing Here's the list of the first cohort. So this was launched, the accelerator was launched last year. It is, we're still in the middle of our first cohort that we're supporting. These are the groups that were selected in the first cohort. We're going to be starting a second cohort soon and have resources, I believe, for a third for sure. And we don't know where this program goes, if it continues, if there's a lot of interest in the programming, or and if we can continue to get funding, or is it something that serves as a particular purpose for a short amount of time. We're still in that, and we're excited to really hear from frontline leaders about what needs to happen to support their ability to draw down on more federal resources. The highlighting Low Country Alliance for Model Communities as one of the members of the cohort, and also wanted to be able to share with you all, and I'll try to wrap up soon because I know we want time for like questions and answers. And again, these slides can be made available, so please excuse me for going so quickly. So the suite of supports to build capacity and connections. So on the left side, and this is all under the Justice 40 Accelerator. Again, so this is the nonprofit-led work, not the federal program. So within the nonprofit Justice 40 Accelerator, every participant, every participant receives $25,000 to participate, knowing that it takes time and resources that to be able to participate in something like this. So everybody gets $25,000. There's also federal funding preparation workshops. So there's a lot of information sharing and workshops to help break down the federal funding and how to interact with it, and some of the pitfalls and things to look out for and things like that. There's technical expertise to support funding applications with grant writing, data, and research. And so that's actually providing and paying for, in addition to the $25K, paying for folks to help with your grant writing or accounting or creating a budget or things like that. And then there's one-on-one navigation support of Justice 40 Accelerator. So hiring folks that are experts in this space to provide, to spend time with folks one-on-one who are really interested in getting a application across the finish line. And then there's an online portal of resources. Another, just to the right, is another I guess, set of offerings that has been acknowledged by cohort members as being incredibly valuable. And those are the opportunities to be with other folks doing the work, like to be in peer-to-peer relationships. There's so much expertise from the front lines, right? Like there's so much expertise there that the ability to be in space and community with folks that are kind of in the same stages and learning about that. So a lot of the peer-to-peer work has been really, really, I think, helpful and of a lot of interest to our cohort members. Partnership opportunities and connections in an equity ecosystem, so that's similar. Informational sessions about federal agency initiatives, funding opportunities, and eligibility. And I should say, this doesn't come out here, but the way it's set up, we call them chill and chats. And so folks can be in community with government officials who are charged with executing the federal flow of funding through Justice 40, to be able to be in conversation and give feedback to say, hey, this is where your programs are actually, this is what you're doing that makes it inaccessible to my community, and this is what you're doing well. And so the government is in a position to learn and listen, and also share what they know about what's moving forward with Justice 40, so that members of the cohort can have that information. So this is what I was talking about. This is just, engagement directly with the Biden administration. Target outcomes, frontline community-led projects are more effective and successfully applying for and being awarded federal grants. And I want to note with this that there's some folks that have gone through this program and are like, the juice is not worth the squeeze, as my colleagues at the Partnership for Southern Equity say. And for us, that's a win. We want our people to move with self-determination in our power to engage with federal funding in the ways that we feel like that'll serve our vision, right? And so naming that. The ecosystem, another outcome, the ecosystem of leaders from Black and historically disinvested communities of color is strengthened as a result of peer collaborations and partnerships built through the Justice 40 Accelerator. And finally, this is where it's about the influencing the problematic systems in place, right? The federal resourcing system is transforming towards reparation and restoration because organizations have access to decision makers who are now aware of biases and exclusionary practices inherent in the current system. And I really love, Michael, your stories and familiar with Regenesis' work, but also having folks from our communities who are in office, who are in those positions of power that can start to be transforming from within, and our ability to support folks that are inside doing that work. Just as a list of the types of projects and the work that folks are working on in the accelerator, so broad, and folks are doing a combination of this work and giving a sense of that. So I'll wrap up in like a minute. So tools and resources, I'll give a couple and then some tips. One tool which just dropped, I don't know if y'all have seen this, but Emerald Cities, which collaborative, which is a partner and a member of the cohort, they're doing great work. They put out a Justice 40 playbook, which I think is really cool. So check that out. The website's down here. And again, we'll share these slides. And then there's a Justice 40 story map, which also just dropped. This is a beautiful online resource that provides a lot of information about the historical context of why this moment is important, why we need transformation in our government funding, and also what's happening, excuse me, with the Justice 40 initiative, the federal program, and the accelerator, and gives some background on the cohort. So another great resource. Some tips that the navigators that we work with, again, they helped me put together these slides. I'm not deep in this work, but they provided some really great tips on this final slide. Build relationships. Many of y'all know, Michael, I know you know this based on how you have moved and hearing your story. And a lot of folks on this call know this, but building relationships it can really go a far way with having access to government resources. And getting the government officials at the local level, who a lot of times the federal money will flow down through the state or local, right? So having relationships with state and local folks where it's possible, where it's not a hostile environment, could be really beneficial to your application being kind of bumped to the top. That's how it's been done before. This is how the people who have the relationships, who are generally white folks, keep getting the contracts. Advocate for grant applications to be submitted with local government as a direct recipient and NGO as a subrecipient. This is a little nuanced and I think works if you're in a local government scenario where the folks have your back and you feel like you're working with allies and not in a hostile situation. And then on the right side is some tips on doing government engagement, researching, looking at which agencies are giving the type of money that you would be interested in, subscribe to those newsletters so you can hear right away when money is dropping, and seeking pre-proposal meetings. So kind of being, I think of it as like being in a classroom. I wasn't this type of student, but the students who are like, wanted to talk to the teacher and understand what's going to be on the quiz and stuff like that. So really being in relationship with folks like that and attending any webinars that you can. Saying all this, knowing that that's a lot of work. And so that's where we're at, like, this is the realistic way things are moving. And we're also hoping to change things so that we either have the resources to be able to participate fully in the way that the money flows, or we change it up. So that's it. Justice 40, I'll put it in the chat, the Justice 40 Accelerator website, which also has a space where you can email us. We monitor our email very closely if you want to learn more about the program. Thank you.
Thank you for all that. I'm sure they got a lot of interest from our attendees here on how to access that. And part of this, I kind of consider myself a cynical optimist. So hearing the frontline stories can kind of weigh on you, but to see action like this is really encouraging. We got a few minutes and I have a list of prepared questions, but I'm gonna while I go through this, let Alicia kind of scour the chat and see if there's any questions from the audience. But the one I wanted to ask first and this is to the panel at large, but hopefully we'll have more time. But if for people listening on Facebook or on the group here want to get involved and actually take action, how do y'all feel is the best route to go about that? Because I feel a lot of these talks, we end up feeling the emotional status. We want to get involved, but then taking that next step of getting involved can be confusing and sometimes ineffective. So we'll start with Michael, because I see him down there on the list, and then kind of work our way up back to Angela, and then finish out with Keith.
Relationships really, really are key. And I guess the unfortunate reality of some of the best times to get the attention of those who have been elected to represent your interests fall right around now. This is primary season. And for those who are currently in office and those who are seeking office, is the absolute best time to try to have those conversations initially. Number one, to find out what people know. Number two, what their interests are in terms of things that are complementary towards the needs of the community. But in particular, if it's not on their radar, then it's the best time for the communities and individuals to try to move people to where you would like them to be a part of as they either retain their office or they gain office. And so it's a great time to develop those relationships and also to put very critical things in front of those who are here to represent our interests.
Thank you. Angela?
I feel like for my community, the best way to mobilize and to get people to come is to continue in the manner that we are doing, but be a little bit more aggressive with the meetings and invitations and what we're doing right now, like going Facebook Live, continuing to tell the stories of what's happening in our community and how it happened. And then try to reason with why it is happening and what we can do as a people to help change and guide and lead people to respect and know that we exist, and that we are human. We're just like the next person, that we shouldn't be viewed or disregarded by the color of our skin, and the things that has had to take place with the loss of lives, not only in Michael's community, but my community also. This has been ongoing and we need to tell the story. The story need to be validated because it's truth behind it.
Thank you. And Sakita?
Yeah, I would say, I can't speak for, I'm not from South Carolina or live there now. So I would defer to y'all in terms of how to engage on this. I think that there's having more community voices saying these are the terms that we need to see to make sure that we actually see these resources. To say that whether it's writing op-eds, whether it's doing, being in relationship and going to the Capitol or whoever, going to people's offices, but to have a very big united voice to say, like, this is how this can work for Black communities in South Carolina. This is how it could work for Indigenous people of color, and be loud, like Angela said. I think, there's folks are going to figure out ways to get this money, and folks have no problem, even though they know this money is not earmarked for them, they're going to have no problem trying to get these contracts. And so I think being loud is really important. And Michael really gave some sweet insights in terms of like legislative timing and how to navigate political pressure. Those type of insights are like gold. And so I think it sounds like y'all have the tools to move something forward.
Great, and we're running short of time, so I want to make sure if there's any questions from the audience or questions via the chat that we get to that.
We do have a question that came from Reverend Bozeman. She had to leave. She asks, how do we get to the state tables that are working on Justice 40 initiatives? And this might be a question for Sakita, but of course, if anyone else wants to respond, please do.
I don't know that I have a great answer. It's gonna depend state to state. I don't know if it was meant by tables, some of the external out of government organizing that's happening, or if it's inside the government where there might be some cross agency tables that are being set up. And so I don't have insights on the ground in South Carolina to know what's moving. I think folks in this virtual room probably do. So I don't know that I'm the best to speak to it. And I wouldn't be surprised. I think a lot of places, those tables don't exist yet. So it might be, that might be an answer to your question too, Brandon, where it might be that the table needs to be set up, because we can't always be trying to get to their tables. We have, we don't have time to be at everybody else's table. So having our own table. And so that's what I have to offer, but I don't think that I'm necessarily bringing the best expertise on that question.
And were there any questions from the audience or the chat room, I guess, Zoom audience? All right.
We don't have any other questions at this point.
All right. Well, I wish we had some more time because I have a couple lists here, but we'll let Alicia kind of take us out and hopefully set up another talk in the future. But I'd like to thank all the panelists because this was excellent. I mean, this is a great start to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Brandon. And I agree, this was definitely a great start to the conversation. We do have this on Facebook Live and we can share this. I think this really is the beginnings of conversation around, to Sakita's point, that there isn't enough conversation around networking, around coming together to actually have plans in place and being able to take those plans to decision makers to ensure that those communities that really should be prioritized are prioritized in South Carolina. And I am going to close out with just some thoughts, and this is from Presiding Bishop Michael Curry, and then I'll share a couple of announcements and also offer it up to all of us, to all of you, to share announcements if you have any. This was from a sermon a couple of years ago, I believe. Imagine the God's earth and people restored. Imagine a world where children do not go to bed hungry at night. A world where we learn to lay down our swords and shields by the riverside and study war no more. Imagine our air is clear, our water is clean, our environment healing. Imagine a world where there is liberty and justice for all. Imagine a world where every person is seen as God sees us, as a child of God, equally endowed, imago Dei, in the image and likeness of God, and therefore equally treated under law and in all human relationships. Imagine a new heaven, a new earth, God's earth, and people restore it. Imagine. And I do agree that we are the first step in making that vision a reality. We do invite you. South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light is the faith community's response to climate change. We work towards education, engagement, and action. We invite you to take part in signing and committing to our Earth Care Covenant. It's a way for you to actually commit to taking certain steps to caring for your community, to caring for the environment, to caring for one another, as we know that we believe all people should be cared for. You can stay in touch with SCIPL at scipl.org, also through our Facebook page, and you can email us at hello@scipl.org. At this time, I'll ask if there are any announcements that anyone would like to share, and then I just have a few upcoming events to share. But I want to open it up to our guests first.
I just want to say, along the lines of environmental justice, we are also actively engaged here at Sustaining Way as it relates to food insecurity, food swamps, food apartheids, food deserts. We have a community garden that we're planning for the new Washington Heights community, but we do have a number of thriving community gardens in place. And so April 22nd is Earth Day. So please get in contact with us, sustainingway.org. You can reach out to us and we'll have some thriving projects on that day, working directly in impacted urban communities and communities of color. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Sakita, Angela, and Michael. It was wonderful, a pleasure to have you here with us today. I do want to announce that one of our partners, Just Faith, as well as Creation Justice Ministries, another partner, is presenting Weathering the Storm. And this is their Earth Day event. It is faithful climate resilience. And to learn more and register, I will make sure that I put the link in the chat box. Also, our next faith, health, and climate discussion will be on June 21st. This will be a panel discussion on extreme heat. And in South Carolina, many of us are familiar with points in time where we do have extreme heat, especially in certain parts of our state. So that discussion is planned for June 21st. And then also on April 26th, Conservation Lobby Day is an opportunity for relationship building, for capacity building, for learning about the process of advocating and going to the State House and engaging in conversations with our elected officials. So April 26th, this is an opportunity for you to work with about 40 other organizations that will be at the State House, who will be at the State House on April 26th as part of Conservation Lobby Day. And again, thank you so much for being with us today. And we look forward to seeing you again on June 21st. God bless.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.